information and discuss different approaches to study them. Please give a warm welcome to Emilio Vilanova.
Thank you, Itzua, for that introduction. Thank you all for being here. All right. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm a grad student at UW, as you know by now. I'm the School of Forest and Environmental Sciences. And I'm originally from Venezuela. Before I came here, I was a part of the Forest Research Institute, where I've been working for a while, focusing on tropical forest ecology and tropical forest management. So this is what I'm going to do today. What I would like to do is to clear your mind and follow me on a walk on a nice trail in one of my research sites in Venezuela. We're going to discuss, or I would like to address, four main questions. Why tropical forests are important? What are the major threats that are tropical forests facing today? Are tropical forests changing? And what does that even mean for forests? And how do we study these changes? So we can start right now. I think before we even start to talk about what's actually changing, you should set some ground rules about what is actually the word changing in terms of forests. So I found that this Calvin saying, you know what's weird? Day by day, nothing seems to change, but pretty soon everything is different. I found like a good analogy or a good message when it comes to forests, because forests are long-lived ecosystems, and it's really, really hard to find meaningful changes that we need to detect. That's why we're studying long-term processes. So if you go to the dictionary, if you look for the word change, you can find that something is different. Something has been transformed from a state, from a previous shape. Something has been altered, and something has been modified. So before I dive into tropical forests, I would like to use a couple of local examples from here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know if you know Park Forest, south of Seattle, a couple of hours, nice research site that University of Washington has, where we have a really nice old growth patch, and from summer to winter, from fall to spring, seasonal changes are a natural part of forests. So things work differently in any of these seasons. So trees grow in the summer, they don't grow in the winter, although a few of them can grow eventually. Wildlife function differently, the forest function differently, so change is a natural part of the whole ecosystem. And again, using another example of the Pacific Northwest, you may know more than me the importance of fires or the importance of any other disturbance like logging, harvesting, snowstorm, avalanche. Those are forces that can make the forest change naturally. So all things being equal, forests change through time. Whether it's they incorporate more trees, species change over time, and maybe in about 500 years, we can find out in a totally different state from the very first moment where fire started and changed the whole ecosystem. In the tropics, it's not that different. This is a nice picture from a seasonal forest in Central America, where the amount of water that is available in the system can make the forest respond in different ways. So whether some trees loses the leaves to avoid the loss of water, change is a natural, again, it's a part of the natural cycle of an ecosystem, in particular forests. So what is this change that I'm talking about in my title tonight? I'm talking about this large-scale experiment that we as humans have been conducting for a while. So on the right, you see the increase in CO2 emissions. On the left, the associated increase in temperature. Overwhelming evidence says that there is an evidence that the planet has been getting warmer. So far, we are in a threshold that hasn't been reported before. So we are talking about this huge change, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with forests, but we have some evidence. So I think you know more than me about the issue of the California drought. It's a good example of what this change could mean. For the past 5 to 6 years, California has been experiencing a severe drought. that overall has been estimated in affecting about 100 million trees. So that's a huge part of the change that I'm talking about tonight. And there is a huge concern about what the effects of this major drought. So for instance, 2017 saw one of the worst wildfire seasons. There's, with this increasing concern of a lot of trees dying, there's the more concern that this is going to get worse in the future. But droughts is another part of another natural phenomenon that happens in many ecosystems. Every once in a while, we get seasons, dry seasons, that can affect the ecosystem in dark part of the natural cycle of many ecosystems. The associated change with global warming is that these droughts are more frequent and more severe, and the associated effects of droughts and tree mortality has been now not only recorded in North America, but also in South America, Africa, Asia, and everywhere, and for the most part, all over the world. This doesn't mean that there are millions of trees dying. It's just that droughts are a huge part of many of the forces of change in many forests. So now we are in this. You remember that trail? Now we are in the entrance of the trail. I want to now dive into tropical forests, and I'm going to ask you, why do we care about tropical forests? What do you think they are important? Any idea? Somebody say biodiversity. I mean, oxygen.
Carbon.
They're all very important issues and they're very important factors of why we care about tropical forests. So if you say diversity, you're right. Tropical forests are the habitat for more than half of the species of plant and animal species. To give you an idea, there is an estimation of about 50,000 tree species living in tropical forests. In 1 hectare of any given tropical forest, you can find maybe 200 tree species, compared to maybe 20 or 30 in the most diverse temperate zone, temperate forests in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. Somebody said carbon. More than half of the carbon in the world forest is stored in the tropics. This has huge implications because not only they store a lot of carbon, but due to deforestation rates, there is an estimation that maybe 10 to 20% of the carbon that is being emitted is coming from losing forests in the tropics. So that's another important part of why tropical forests are a key player in the global climate arena. But sometimes, and sadly, frequently, people, when discussing about the importance of tropical forests, forget about the people that is living in the forest or outside the forest. There is an estimated number, about 1 billion people living inside or nearby the forest, what we call forest-dependent people. And most of them are living in the tropics. Whether it's for food, livelihood, jobs, tropical forests sustain local economies. For instance, Brazil nut is a huge important crop coming from the Amazon. Timber harvesting, whether it's legally or illegally, sustain a lot of local economies as well. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I like to have a good caipirinha. So tropical forests are also the source of inspiration for many important stories. Probably you remember the movie Avatar. So now we are moving to the sticky part of that trail. So we're going to discuss what are the main drivers of change in particular the Amazonian forest. Amazonia or the Amazon basin is an area estimated in 6 million square kilometers. It's the whole area surrounded with different colors there. Green represent the protected areas. Orange, yellow are the areas allocated for indigenous communities. And among all of those, you see a lot of roads, delimiting and surrounding the area. There is a lot of pressure for building roads. There are pressure for oil expansion, gas, gold mining, not only in the Amazon basin, but also in northern South America, Venezuela, and Colombia also suffering from the same issue. So logging is happening and is a major source of degradation and force of changes. Gold mining has been increasing for the past 5 years a lot. This is a picture from my country, Venezuela, where the government just allocated about 10% of the area of the country to gold mining, and the consequences of that are already evident in terms of pollution, the deforestation, and local and social conflicts as well. But probably agriculture is the main driver of change of deforestation in the Amazon basin. For many commodities like soy, wheat, cattle, or beef, these are the major forces of changes in the way sources of change in tropical forests, and why we are losing forests in the tropics. Fires associated with, in many instances, with agriculture has also been an increase in fires in the affected fires as well. So now we see fires that in places where we rarely see because of the associated effects of droughts. So fires can affect thousands and thousands of miles, maybe from Bolivia all the way to Colombia. So there is a change in the way nutrients are also moving throughout the Amazon. This used to be a drone video, so it was going to make the presentation really slow. So what I take is in the middle of the Amazon, in Manaus, one of the wettest areas in the Amazon, 2016, between 2015 and 2016, we saw one of the worst droughts recorded. So fires that are not a natural part of the disturbance of this forest came in to already affected forests and basically took a toll of thousands and thousands of trees. So forests that were not adapted to fires and major droughts are now being affected. So that's another effect of those changes. So now we make a pause, look up, look at the sign, and we're going to discuss what are these changes that are and how what are the main effects of these changes, in particular the atmospheric change. And this is where my project, my research project is focusing. The evidence of the research that's been undergoing in the tropics for a while says that atmospheric change can have two potential roles. One that can enhance the forest growth and the dynamics of the system. We can have this evidence we have evidence of forest dieback, or there could be no change. And for all three options, we have evidence happening at the same time, which make everything complicated in the way how to make the doubts and how to make good decisions about how to conserve, how to manage this forest. Let's take a look about the first option, the enhanced growth and dynamics. Now we have more carbon in the atmosphere, so that means that carbon enhances photosynthesis, which makes the trees grow faster. And there is evidence that more carbon and more faster growth makes the trees use water more efficiently, which can make them mitigate dry seasons. And higher temperatures make the nutrients in the soil cycling faster. That also creates an environment that moves everything faster. So what does it even mean when we talk about not only the individual tree, but to a stand scale? When we say stand, we mean a lot of trees combined. So while a tree might get larger and grow faster, they can also reach their mature state faster. So it's sort of a lie fast, die young kind of strategy. And they can die faster. That means that they might be growing faster, they might be storing more carbon, but they also can die faster. So, but at the stand scale, that also means that more trees are being also recruited, so more trees are entering the system. And so this effect of growth and recruitment is larger than the effect of mortality. So this is what we call turnover. So the difference between growth and recruitment and mortality is what we call turnover. It's one of the main points of my research. So this difference between these two areas is what we say that when we say that the forest is a carbon sink. So there's more carbon entering the system than the carbon that is going out. But with the increase in carbon, but at the same time the higher temperatures and the frequency of droughts, we see a potential effect of forest dieback. So higher temperatures can also create a stress in the canopy. They can make the trees lose water more faster than they used to be. That also can affect the growth overall, so the growth is reduced. And what does this even mean for the time scale? So while the trees keep growing, they also can die also faster because of the lack of water, especially. So at the same time, less trees are entering the system. So we have an unbalance where that red arrow is starting to keep up with the green one. And what is also happening is that while this is at the same time more trees are dying, is that there might be a difference in the species composition. So that means that while trees that are used to store more, grow slower and store more carbon, are now changing to maybe more lianas, palms, or other trees that grow faster. That means the potential for carbon storage is being reduced. So now we have another, we still have almost like a parallel and a balanced system, but still trees are dying faster and more. So how do we study these changes? Whether we care about whether we focus on a tree level all the way to the globe, we always have to go to the field and measure some trees and do something in the field. So no matter the scale, you need some field-based information. So we use inventory plots, remote sensing, which is basically analyzing satellite images. And we analyze those in combination with complicated statistical models all the way to predict what's going to happen, especially at the global scale. So my work is mostly based on permanent sample plots or permanent forest plots. So what is exactly permanent forest inventory plot? It's a given area that can have multiple shapes, multiple sizes, and this is not only, I must say that this is not only happening in the tropics. The United States Forest has a large, really important network of this type of research sites. What is exactly what we do? We take information of the species that are in the system. For instance, we measure the height of the trees. We measure the diameter to estimate the growth. If we are keeping track of the history and the dynamics of this forest, we keep track of how many trees are dying, how many trees are entering the system. And there are many examples of these sites all over the tropics. I'm going to focus on this particular network that I've been part for the past 10 years. It's called the Amazon Forest Inventory Network, where more than 500 of these permanent sites are being connected. Yellow dots means single census plot. What that means is sites that are being visited just once, and the reds mean sites that are being revisited more than once. Luckily, we now have, this is not an updated version of the map, so we have more of the red ones coming in, and more sites also being established as well. What is exactly that we do in this plot? So I said maybe we carry some ladders through the forest, which is not an easy thing to do. We measure the diameter. In some cases, people with older questions can install some specialized equipment to study how water moves through the trees. In some of these cases, in particular, in one particular example, people are excluding the water from the system to actually test the effect of droughts. And that is one of the most complicated experiments that I've ever seen. And I don't think it's working right now, but you can imagine how maintaining this type of experiment is, how complicated it could be with all the tree poles breaking your greenhouse and like that. It's as being one of a unique experience in the tropics. My project focuses specifically in Venezuela, using data from about 100 plots of this in different sites. I became involved with this about 10 years ago, but some of these plots go back all the way to 1950. So some of these plots are the oldest plots in the tropics, which make them very unique and very important in terms of collecting information for tropical forest management and ecology. So last field campaign was in 2016, where we measured trees and we climbed those trees. Well, I didn't climb them, I paid somebody, an expert to do that. But we collect extra information that can help us to understand how forest works and function. And occasionally we find interesting trends that can in some cases delay the experience, like those sticky bugs that can run and mess with it one day of field work. So I said before, we have evidence for option 2 and for option 1 and option 2. There is a notion in ecology that says all growth forests or mature forests don't ever change. there's always a balance between how many trees die and how many trees grow. So there was a big issue in 2004 when part of this, a selected portion of this plot that I showed before, were measured for a while, and they were showing that it was an increase in the amount of new trees and in the amount of growth compared to the amount of trees that were dying. But at the same time, both processes were increasing over time, which means that this difference in both were significant, being considered as a significant carbon sink. The hypothesis behind that was, first, we have a global effect of more carbon in the atmosphere. People will say, maybe that's too much. I think you're overreacting. Maybe the plots are not being installed, are not installed whether there's an actual old growth. So the hypothesis was still being discussed today. Other hypotheses were these forests were recovering from disturbance that happened millions of years ago or thousands of years ago, like fires, or even recovering from the manipulation of local pre-Columbian or post-Columbian communities that were using the forest. For some particular site, all of these are probably true, so which makes it more complicated, the analysis. This might be a little complicated, but this is with more sites being monitored and for a longer time. 2015 saw this evidence of, first, the upper panel shows an increase of the amount of biomass of all the dead trees for all those plots that I showed you before, showing an increase between 1985 and 2010. So there was an effect of an increase in the amount of biomass of all the trees that were dying. At the bottom, and the graphic on the bottom shows what we call the net biomass change, is essentially the difference between the mortality and the growth. So if it's above zero, it means that the forest is a carbon sink. If it's below zero, it's a carbon source. So at the same time, trees were dying faster and more in the amount of biomass. There was a sharp decline, or a steady decline, I should say, in the amount of carbon that's being stored in the forest. So the hypothesis behind that is not only global change is accelerating this process, but also 2000, 2005, almost like every 5 years, including 2015, saw larger droughts and bigger droughts and very severe droughts in the Amazon. So which make these carbon sink services that the Amazon are providing, it puts in peril and in danger. Next. So now we're back to the trail that I showed you before. I hope by now you will agree with me that tropical forests are important. They are important resources for the world. And research has shown that tropical forests are indeed changing, but the evidence needs to be continued. The studies need to be continued. I heard a quote today that struck me that the worst thing that forest ecology can do is start a long-term project and end one, because it's really hard to keep up with all these measures at the same time. So I want to finish with highlighting the importance of how this network, how important these networks are for understanding how tropical forests function. Without this, we will not know at the larger scale how tropical forests function, particularly in the Amazon. So we are generating knowledge, we are helping students. I'm an example of that. We are creating a good partnership to connect with other scientists throughout the world. Collaboration, the idea of this is to generate all this information to help generate better policies for conservation and management of tropical forests. I don't want to end without taking the opportunity to draw your attention or to thank Engage for giving me this opportunity to dedicate this talk to a lot of people that I know, friends and colleagues that are struggling in science, especially scientists that I know, are struggling in Venezuela. So my talk and my practice goes to them. So I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
I noticed in your plot for the carbon sink plot, I don't know, it was maybe 5 slides ago or something. There was that flip kind of in the 1980s that was almost as high as the entire trail.
If you notice the grain scale in the plot, that means the number of plots that were used. So back in the 80s, we had very few plots. So the overall variance in those plots was really high. Once we started getting more plots, those confidence intervals were getting shorter. So that's one. And I must say that some of the probably early sites were established maybe in sites that maybe they gap open and there was a huge increase in mortality. And so those sites were later taken out of the analysis. So that there is a complicated one. I just wanted to show the trend. So.
This is a total molecular biologist question, but are there ways to, I don't know, by tree cores or more advanced technology, get a sense of if the tree is like growing really fast and using nutrients quickly, or if it's sort of in that slow growth pattern? Like, can you get that kind of data in your inventory?
The number one thing we do is measure by that diameter, and we get those growth rates directly. The problem, one of the problems compared to what people do here in the temperate zones is that easily here you can cover a tree, count the rings or measure the rings, and easily get whether that tree is growing faster or slower. We don't get that in the tropics. It's mainly because we don't have one growing season. We may have 2 or 3 at the same time. So the species that actually generate rings can have 3 or 4 rings a year. We don't know exactly if that's 1 year. And the other thing is that there are many species that actually don't show any rings. So people are using radiocarbon to estimate ages, for instance, and then estimate from that the overall growth rate.
You mentioned the possibility of really, really old events impacting the growth of specific plots. So like, is that just because the trees are that old and so that's why those events still matter, or is it like an epigenetic thing affecting descendants?
There has been a huge debate of how old tropical forests are. There are mixed evidence, but there are no that old as timber forests. The dynamics of the tropic is way faster that makes the life cycle very, very short. So people have been using a lot of modeling techniques to go back and try to simulate severe storms, huge fires, and they don't find that the recurrence time of those events happening that often. So it's unlikely, at least that's the main trend in the rainfall position and the rainfall group, that there is no chance that this is something that was previous event happening. Now the discussion is where these plots are located. So they are located where they're more accessible in many ways. So that means more people could have been altered those forests and we don't know. And that's another. So the discussion about whether tropical forests are changing because of those events is shifting now to assess the effects of droughts. Because that is happening, and that's probably now maybe more important to address.
Are we seeing, because I've heard that as the temperature rises, we're seeing like faster species die off, where we're losing more and more species every year. Are you seeing that in your research, where like in a particular plot of land, over the course of your study or whatever, this one species just seems to not be able to cope as well. So we're losing more and more species every year.
I cannot answer the cause of that, but I've seen in some particular sites that there's a shift in the species composition, meaning that species that used to be there, especially slow growth species that store more carbon, are now, after 20 or 30 years, are not there. That doesn't mean that's going to keep going. Again, these cycles, these are natural cycles. Species can disappear eventually, then appear again in some of these sites. But in some cases, the overall trend is that yes, we're losing some species, especially the slow-growing ones.
We know that technology that's doesn't have recent times. Do you think there's this way we can time that we avoid this?
I hope not. fact, this is basic information that needs to be collected. The more information, the actual real information